Welcome to From the Bone Vault. I'm Gill.
And I'm Levi.
And I'm Justin.
And this week we're watched Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Dun, 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 dun.
Gill's a little bit too excited about that.
Oh, I was very excited. So guys, this is the first film, not only of... I think season 2. We'll see how the order shakes out. But this is the first movie of Mini Menace Month, where we're going to be reviewing the creature features that had little tiny menaces in them. And we figured there's no better film to start with than Gremlins 2. Levi, as always, hit us with some facts.
Well, Gill, Gremlins 2, The New Batch was a sequel to the popular Gremlins movie, which was released in 1984. Mm-hmm. And really, it was just kind of a money grab for the studio. They really wanted to make... Yeah. If you can't tell from the subject matter. They just wanted to make a bunch of money, and they asked Joe Dante, the director, to come back to direct the sequel, and he refused. He was just tired of doing that sort of work. But after a while, they kind of wore him down, and he said, look, if I can do whatever I want, I'll come back. So they pretty much gave him carte blanche, and he kind of used it as an opportunity to make a statement about the nature of sequels and to kind of make fun of the original movie itself. And the script was written by Charles Haas, and he used the characters that Chris Columbus created for the first movie.
Oh, Chris Columbus was... I guess that's the thing is like I never really paid attention to the detail of the original film to know how
he wrote
it
the first
kind
one.
of fed... Okay, so all right, I got you.
And Chris Columbus is the father of the African slave trade and Gremlins.
No.
That was way early in his career. We try not to think about that.
Super early. He's also a vampire. Who knew?
But 84 to 90, right? And that's a pretty big gap for a movie. But I guess Ghostbusters was similar to that too. And
well, they wanted to release it sooner, but it kind of floundered for a few years. And Joe Dante himself said that he wasn't quite sure it was going to work, and he's been on record as calling it the most unnecessary sequel ever and nothing more than an elaborate puppet show, which I think are apt descriptions.
And you know what's funny about it was the moment it started, the very beginning, I remember I texted a friend of mine, he was still up, and I was like, someone cared a lot about this movie. There's yes. that helicopter shot. The helicopter shot leads into New York. It passed the Twin Towers. There's some really beautiful cinematography at the very beginning.
Well, that was stock footage, though.
Oh, I was like, well, this might be good. And then...
wait, I actually have a tidbit about that. That footage you see at the very beginning, that was actually used in one of the Superman films.
Really?
Yep. I want to say that's from the second film. That's one of their aerial shots.
You know what's funny was that I made my roommates look at it too because they wanted to see something about an actor that was in there, and they asked like, "Why does it look so bad at the beginning?" It looks so bad because like Gil just said, it's stock footage from 10 years earlier.
Exactly.
And even converting it to 1080, which is what I watched it in, it didn't transfer right.
Right. Yeah, I watched it on Blu-ray and I felt the same way. The rest of the movie had a different quality. It was a little less grainy.
Justin, you brought up the beginning of the film, but that's not really the beginning of the film. The beginning of the film is Bugs and Daffy, for some fucking reason, being at the very beginning. Why were they there?
Because it's like it's a holdover. Like that's the thing they used to always have those little cartoons before movies.
But that wasn't a trope that was being. Is it supposed to be a throwback to when that was a thing?
But the better question being done. The better question is, why the fuck were they still there in the released movie? Like that is for like a bumper in the movie theater. That's not for me to watch at my house. Like if I want to watch Bugs and Daffy, I'll turn on Cartoon Network.
Exactly.
Right. But I feel like they're representative of something I've always liked about this movie, and that's just how Warner Brothers this movie is. They literally have the Warner Brothers symbol being tattooed on a gremlin later. They have the bat symbol in the wall.
There's so much placement in this movie. All throughout my notes, I'm like, that's a nod. And talk about placement. How much Phantom of the Opera shit popped up in this movie just because it was set in New York.
The mask on Haviland Morris's neck in the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
There's a giant mask
It's
necklace.
like a half. Yeah.
She wore like
half mask.
3 different
And-
chokers that had mask faces on them.
And I'm like, what is going on with that brooch? Like, I actually stopped it and took a photo and sent it to someone. I was like, I thought at first that I had turned away and she had been wearing a mask and then like dropped it to her neck on a string. I was super confused.
Well,
Oh,
you
dude,
know,
that and the shoulder pads.
Oh,
and
God.
while you were distracted by her, I was distracted by something else at Billy's desk during that scene. The comic books in his desk.
I saw those
See
two.
him.
I saw those
I didn't
two.
even see him. What did he have?
He had, let's see, Batman and the Outsiders, Volume 1, Number 2.
Okay.
And he also had Firestorm, the Nuclear Man. Oh, excuse me, The Fury of Firestorm.
So he
the
had
Nuclear
like
Man.
old Firestorm, like
They're like early 80s comics. And I actually collect Batman and the Outsiders. I have most of that original run. And that's where I recognize it from. I recognize the little top corner.
That's
you
pretty
see.
crazy.
And I'm a nerd, so I looked it up. But yeah, Billy obviously loves comics. That's one reason he likes to
It's
draw.
funny you notice that because like Warner Brothers has a thing they'll do, and a lot of studios do this. When they shoot TV shows for like the CW and stuff, they'll buy their props from the same place. So you can buy a bunch of bullshit prop comics that are just like, oh, it's Man Boy or something, and they just
Man
have the-
Boy? Wait, Man Boy, is that your like the boy who became a man when
Hey,
he did?
You make
wait,
you make fun of it, but there's a Lady Man comic, like a man that's half woman, half man. Like he split down the
What?
middle like
That's
Two-Face.
an actual comic.
God.
Yeah, he split
That's
down the
not a
middle
fake
like
comic.
Two-Face, and it's bonkers. But anyway, like they make these printout comics that you can buy for studios to use as props, and books and other junk like that. So if you watch closely in enough movies made by one studio or even TV shows,
the
you'll
same
just
shit.
see you'll see the same beer in the background in 2 different shows, the same, props like being used over and over.
Well, I've noticed, like on Big Bang Theory, they have some really old ass comics on the new comic shelf, and it really bugs me. It's like stuff from the mid '90s or late '90s,
wow.
and I'm like, really? This show
Oh,
is supposed
man,
to be
I
about
don't.
nerds?
I guess I never catch that level of detail on stuff.
Well, that stands out really bad in something like that because mid 90s like art style for comics is very distinct.
Yeah,
And-
for sure.
And I mean, like that's one of the that's the kind of thing. Like I noticed stuff early on in the movie. The first big reveal in this movie was the Doctor from Voyager is there, and he has hair. And like I was kind of half paying attention because the first thought I had was, is this Asian guy the same Asian guy from Doctor Strange who had no hand? And I was like thinking that, but then it wasn't him. And then like they did this shot where the Asian guy's in the background and he's working on something. And then the Doctor from Voyager steps in front and he's like dead center in camera. And I go, holy shit, it's the Doctor, like out loud, like to myself, because that was...
Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. I was like, that's just that was the first, like, oh my God, I know that person.
Well, while we're on it,
actor, but
why don't I just go through the cast real quick? While we're on it?
Please.
From the first film, they brought back quite a few people from the first film. Zach Galligan reprised his role as Billy Pilser. Phoebe Cates as Kate Berenger. Dick Miller and Jackie Joseph came back as the Futtermans in a pretty funny
Dick
cameo.
Miller, man, he's the best.
I have a word about the Futtermans later that just made me super upset, and I don't even understand.
Okay.
How
I'll
this
be interested
movie,
to hear that for sure.
I mean, I can say it right now. It's not.
Okay.
It won't really. It doesn't have a time or place for the movie. But basically, Mrs. Futterman has a camera with a gigantic flash on the top, like one of those big old style open bulb flashes. At no point in a movie about creatures who are hurt by bright light does she ever use the light to fight a creature.
Nope.
The flying one shows up, but it's immune to light, so it didn't matter. And I'm like, well, she's got to go in that building and flash one of these gremlins in the face, right? And up until the end of the movie, I'm sitting there going, she's gonna find the gremlin loose somewhere. She's gonna flash it in the face. Never happens.
Or Murray could have taken it from her when he went into the building. Yeah,
that was my thought. I thought he was going to snatch the camera up, run in, and use it to get in the building. Oh, I had Miss Futterman's camera, and then everybody wanted. Okay, there's the payoff. There's the payoff.
They literally in Act 1 put a loaded gun on a shelf and then just leave it there.
Right.
Go ahead, Gil.
Go back to the cast. Let's finish this out because there's a ton of people in this film.
Yeah, well, from the first movie, we also have Key Luke as Mr. Wing and Howie Mandel as the voice of Gizmo once again.
I had completely forgotten about that.
Yeah.
He's Bobby.
I had completely forgotten about that.
But we also have some pretty big names in here too. Among them are Christopher Lee as Dr. Catheter, great name for a doctor. John Astin has a little cameo as the janitor.
I lost my shit when I realized that was John Astin. I'm like, we just can't. John Astin will always, he's like like the lifeblood of this show.
Right.
Like he just lives here.
And you didn't lose your shit over Count Dooku being that doctor? Like that was crazy.
No, but I saw Astin first. I was like, oh my God, it's Astin.
But as Justin pointed out, Robert Picardo is Forster. He was the doctor on Voyager. And Robert Prosky has a really cool role as Grandpa Fred, which is a horror host that was based off pretty much a ripoff of Al Lewis and of basically what Al Lewis was doing, except in his basement and not in a high rise.
It's pretty fun.
Right.
More or less. And John Glover came in as Daniel Clamp, who I remember him in
Smallville?
Smallville, yes, thank you, as Lex Luthor's dad. And
Well, I was like, Lionel Luthor is here.
Yeah, right. He's much nice. I don't know. He's much nicer than Lionel Luthor, though.
Yeah.
And he's a happy guy. A lot more
In
childish.
this movie, he's like a chaotic, good Donald Trump. Like, that's
Yes.
what I got. The hairstyle, the building, like the New York background. It was very Donald Trump. And I was like...
And this whole film just felt like an indictment of the upper class as well. Like Dante was just trying to either using it as a platform to just launch jokes or just like firing missiles that were indictments.
And I know that you're talking about the cast, and there's one member of the cast I'm pretty sure that you didn't even list down. It's this building. The building has a voice. The building has quirky dialogue set in the background over scenes.
Has the best dialogue.
And even then, like, my biggest problem is the building, like, what was it about the 80s and these, like, idea of smart buildings? Die Hard, just like other movies. And building smarter
Demolition
than we ever...
Man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that was later on. And Demolition Man is an amazing movie. Don't say anything bad about it. The movie is,
No, we did a whole podcast.
Go back and listen to our podcast on that one.
I think I saw it in there, but I tried to pick up on the Wesley Snipes one was more of a, I'm like, I want to hear what that's all about. But anyway, like the building has more personality than most of these characters.
Yeah, for sure.
And really the only main cast person that really carries their weight, it feels like, or actually the women, Phoebe Cates and Haviland Morris, who played the boss Marla. Those two carry their weight. But I don't know if you got to it.
Billy's pretty bland.
But you know who Marla is, right? Who that actress is?
No.
I guess I can't place her.
Okay, the moment I saw her, I remembered. She's the actress from Pretty in Pink who gets sexually assaulted by the nerdy dude when she's drunk. That's her. And then the other guy, the Asian guy who had the camera, he's Long Duck Dong.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, they're both in this movie? Like,
Donger need food.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, well, at least Donger's getting better work now.
But he was so stereotypical. I mean, they had to put in
he was
like, I didn't realize that this movie had such like not even guarded racism, like blatant.
They're
the whole Russians thing. You know, they got Russian people driving the taxis in this town. I'm like, holy shit, Dick, could you not be a racist for 5 seconds?
Well, that's within his character, though.
Yeah, and there are two separate Asian stereotypes in the movie. There's the Asian, like, mystic guy, and then the Asian camera person.
Right.
They're both in the same movie. And then, it's not even just that, like, probably the most offensive thing that happens in the entire movie comes near the very end. There's a part where, I think it's Phoebe Cates is telling a story about how she went to the park and a guy who looked like Lincoln sexually assaulted her. And
it's a goof on the first movie.
They kind of just go, oh yeah, whatever. It just kind of like shove her to the side. And I don't know if that like really happened in the first movie. Or,
no,
but go back to the first film. Yeah, go ahead, Levi. Go ahead.
They did that as a goof on the first movie because she got super traumatized by her father falling into the chimney during Christmas and them not knowing it and him burning to death. And they were using it as an opportunity to make fun of themselves. Like, there are a lot of moments in this movie, and when the gremlin exposes himself to her and goes, ah, and she kicks him in the crotch, that's a throwback to the first movie as well, where a gremlin did that to her. So there's a lot of things in this movie that are throwbacks
in this film.
And
that's
exactly, I think they just pushed it to be as absurd as possible. It's Lincoln's birthday as opposed to Christmas. Christmas is one of the most recognizable
holidays,
and enjoyable holidays for a lot of people. And then Lincoln's birthday is just some random thing. And I understand from your point of view that seemed horrible. And I thought about that on my second viewing. I was like, that what happened to her? Because they kind of trail off.
It's funny because with the context of what you're saying about it, it's a much different thing. But if you didn't see the first movie or you hadn't seen it recently, because I have a long history with these movies, and that was the touching thing I was talking about earlier. But it's been over 2 decades since I've seen these movies. Mm-hmm. But when my brother was alive, he loved Gremlins. Like, when I was a little kid, he watched Gremlins all the time. He used to make references to Gremlins. He used to call any kind of weird meat he would see, like gremlin meat, like, oh, that's not beef, that's gremlin meat. And so these were things that my dad and I were discussing this, because I was like, oh, I'm over here and I can't find Gremlins to download anywhere, so I've got to fucking go on Amazon and pay $4 for it. And we were just talking about how, my brother John would watch any stupid movie. And so this was like his thing. Like, he watched Gremlins and he watched, Total Recall and all these old 80s and 90s movies that were like, a lot of animatronics and puppets and Dark Crystal and stuff like that. Those were all his sort of movies. And so watching this, I was like, I remember he used to call me Gizmo as a little kid and just stuff like that. Like,
that's awesome.
So I remember all that. And it's kind of funny because I remember the first movie being a lot better. And the second one, and you can get absurd with a sequel. You can really get absurd. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy does that. The second one's really absurd compared to the first one. But it doesn't push to the point where you're in the theater watching the movie with Hulk Hogan or something, and he's telling you to like, that was like, I actually got up and went to the bathroom, and the bathroom's in the same room, and I come out of the bathroom and like Hollywood Hogan's on my TV and he's telling people to be quiet, and I was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Did you catch the other nod, the other callback there when the guy that's in the booth comes down? He's like, I'm done. All they want to watch is Snow White.
Right. That's what they did in the first movie. They wanted to watch Snow White. And that whole scene was actually a play on something that happened to Joe Dante during a screening of the first movie. A woman came out with her son and said, this movie is too violent. I don't want my son to see it. I want my money back. And at that point, the son ran back into the theater and hid so he could watch the rest of the movie. But Joe Dante put that in the movie. And a lot of things in the movie point to reactions people had in the real world to the first movie and criticisms. Like, one of them was the Phoebe Cates Lincoln's birthday thing with apparently the scene in the first movie. There's a lot of, I don't know if it's controversy, but mixed opinion. Some people think it's really dramatic. Some people think it's really stupid. And so they made fun of it.
I thought it was pretty dramatic in a film like that. I thought
it
that
was
kind of why the first
super
film
dramatic
stood out. Is this like, holy shit, that's got some real pathos to it. That's really good. And then go back to slapstick, yuck, Muppets.
But they flipped it on its head in the second one to sort of make fun of themselves. And they also do that enjoyably with the 3 rules, where the guys in the control room are like, wait. What if they're in an airplane and go over the international date line and they've got something stuck in their teeth?
That was the first thing I thought of when he reminded her of the rules. I was like, wait, that midnight rule doesn't make sense, because midnight is based on a place you're in. So is it just counting from the time of the time zone they're in to the next midnight? So if they move time zones, it will keep that same clock because they're on it.
They're kind of magical beings.
Magic, but
so I mean, they're kind of magic. So it's like, it's all relative.
Yeah,
I kind of hand wave it a little bit. I mean, you could get into it. The thing that bothered me, switching gears from getting an explanation about the magic to getting an explanation about the technology. Why did the building keep fucking up every 5 seconds? I mean, even beyond the gremlins touching it, like even before
it was that a nod to the first thing you see?
There were gremlins. Yeah, one of the is the guy getting into the revolving door and getting flung into people. I'm like, what? I think
it was sort of poking fun at people's desire to have everything automated, and that would be a disaster.
I think that it's kind of an anti-automation technology thing. Because all these movies are at their heart that, like, Die Hard's the same way. It's not as blatant, but they're very much like, because this is automated, it makes it that much easier for someone to come in and turn the automation against you. And so when the Gremlins start to mess the building up, it does cause like a lot of issues that in a regular building would just be a matter of opening a door or turning a thing off. But it's automated. So I forgot all about that because that's how absurd the movie gets like 15 minutes later, because up until the point where
it's absurd. It's absurd from the word freaking go. No. Look at the women walking around on the floor with the big tall hats.
No. Even before that.
But when I say absurd, I mean like they're up until the point where the first batch of the Gremlins come out of him. The movie is relatively grounded in its world. You can, it becomes like, because the Gremlins are like little Deadpools. They're all breaking the fourth wall. Like, you can't even tell how many layers deep, you are in the movie. Like, are you in the film? Because the film references the first film multiple times.
Right.
Like,
Leonard Maltin has a copy of it in his hand.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so, like, but that all happens after the Gremlins come out. It's not before that. And before that, it's almost like he must have written the beginning of this movie before he actually got to shoot it, or he had the idea. And then I think
them coming in with the TV and the
that was
VCR
pretty ridiculous,
and the cassette tape in their hand.
Yeah, I think they. Yeah, I agree with Gill. I think that was a clue of how absurd this movie was going to be. When he says, "Mr. Clamp wants to talk to you," and they roll in a TV. And he's on the videotape.
I thought that was kind of cool. The only thing about the Mr. Clamp thing was the logo on the Clamp videotape drove me insane. Like the logo was like this terrible CGI thing, and it was like a little CGI globe, and the C grabs the globe and squishes it down.
Right.
And I was like, why would you use CGI back then? Everything looked so bad.
Speaking of CGI. It completely pulled me out of the film when you could see where the practical effects stepped out and that they kind of almost green screened Gizmo in.
He walked.
On those scenes where he was walking around, he's doing his little shuffle.
All right.
That irritated the hell out of me.
The best part about those scenes is that it's almost like they're pulling him along like the ground and his feet aren't matching the motions. And so when those twin scientists find him outside, that's the first time you can really see it. And it's just like... the weird callbacks, like the Rambo thing, like that was really weird. And
it was the timing on it was weird to me. It's just like of all the spots where Gizmo could finally, gear up and go get him. Like, why then?
Well, there's 3 separate movies going on here. There's the weird, like, watch these, like, it's like a Gremlin variety show. That's like the surface level. Then right below that is like this show where Billy is a dumbass who every girl wants his dick for some reason. Like women,
I did not get
women
that.
that are way hotter than him. He's like a vacuum cleaner salesman, and like you've got Marla who's like gorgeous, and you have Phoebe Cates who like also is gorgeous, and these girls are like fighting over him, and you're like, these girls could just go get a real like a normal dude. And then at the end, they're like, oh, well, it's okay. Marla's not left alone. She's going to get together with John Glover, who's like easily 20 years older than she is. And,
I think she'll be happy with him, honestly.
She'll be Lex Luthor's mom, and then she'll die. And
that's
how Smallville starts.
Yeah, that's where the red hair comes from.
There you go. Clamp grew a beard, got grumpy.
That's my headcanon.
This is the prequel to Smallville.
There you go. That was my headcanon. It was like, all this happens, and
that's awesome.
John Glover gets untrusting, and his wife dies, and he has a little bald kid. And
I watch Gotham as a prequel to the 66 Batman show, and it makes it a lot more enjoyable.
Ooh,
that's interesting.
We're gonna have to talk about that.
That'll be a separate cast.
I do have another one of those that's pretty special. My roommate Greg watches the show It's Always Sunny. He treats it like that it's a weird period in the penguin's life. Like the penguin gets out of the sewer, he just has these crazy things happen to him, and he becomes this other person.
That's awesome. That's great.
That's canon. That's official.
But before we go on, I want to mention one more piece of the cast. I'm sure we're missing somebody, but the brain gremlin, did you recognize his voice?
I thought I did, but I can't place it.
I actually did know it, and I didn't write it down.
It's Tony Randall.
That's right.
And he uses this sort of overblown, like, I don't know, Eastern educated accent. They called it something in the commentary. I can't remember what it was, but
why wasn't
he uses this. Go ahead.
Why wasn't it just Kelsey Grammer? Kelsey Grammer.
Because it was 1990.
I guess you're right.
Yeah. I don't think he was. I mean, he was out there in front of everything.
I think Tony Randall kills it, and I love his accent because it's so over the top at certain times.
That upper crusty kind of sound to it,
and it sounds like old school. And I love the gag when the gremlin first drinks the potion, he goes on behind the table, and when he comes up, he has glasses on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
That was awesome.
I jotted that down. I'm like, really, movie? You're not even going to try. No. Like, you had all these other genetic changes that, like, okay, that makes sense. Okay, I could get behind that. Glasses? Really?
And while we're talking about the brainy gremlin, I want to bring up some of the technology that you guys brushed on. For the special effects in this movie, the guy who did the effects in the first movie, I can't remember his name, but he had actually moved on to become a director. Steve? Okay, Steve. Yeah, Steve. He had moved on to become a director, and Joe Dante approached Rick Baker, who is a legend in special effects community.
Wow.
And he refused at first, but just like Joe Dante, he said, if I can have control and redesign them a little bit, I'd be glad to do it.
They did look amazing.
Yeah, I thought
I loved how
his iteration was incredible. And something he did that I realized watching this time, that one reason I always kind of liked Gremlins 2 better, other than being a skittish kid who didn't like horror movies. I think the Gremlins, number one, there's such a variety of them. And they have their own personalities, which is something they worked hard on. But also just their faces have such expression. And, you know, their eyes were bigger. And they just looked more like live beings versus the first movie where it just looks like a bunch of... I don't know, like...
They looked a little more evil, I would say.
Yeah, definitely in the first one.
Well,
whereas these were like I guess marketable.
Well, it was 84. I mean, it was 84, and you know, like you got to kind of take that into consideration. And there's still some weird effect stuff happening. There's I wrote down the phrase rotisserie spinning spider, because there's a part when they first find the spider serum. Actually, no, before that, when Billy comes in the lab and he's looking for Gizmo, he's taking the cloth off the top of the cage. There's a spider in one cage, and the spider is just rotating slowly, like it's at a Walmart rotisserie thing, instead of like actually like what Spider would be doing.
Right.
It's the throwaway gag to have him get scared by a spider to get a reaction out of the audience. But I mean, the effects were amazing, though. Yeah. I mean, I've really enjoyed. If we want to dive into the Gremlins and the variety,
let's do it.
That's the thing that just really pulled me in and made me interested to this film.
For sure.
The seeing of like the electric gremlin, the spider gremlin, and speaking of spider gremlin, I thought that was Spike. I didn't know he had.
No, his name's Mohawk.
I didn't know. I didn't know it was a brand new gremlin. I thought it was just another part of Gizmo coming out, you know?
And the cool thing, one thing I liked that Rick Baker sort of added was he made them more like reptilian. Yeah. Because if you notice when Spike turns into the reptilian gremlin, his spikes are almost like fish spines or something.
Yeah,
and just their expression, their faces looked more reptilian than
like
the
a
first
barracuda,
movie.
like a piranha,
like some sort of toothy, sea
those
creature.
Long evil mouths they have. Like
yes.
And then you have Daffy with his eyeballs just popping around in his head the whole movie.
So hold on. You apparently have the list of these things' names.
Yes.
Go for it.
Oh, I don't, Gill. No.
Man.
Daffy was the goofy one, and I know the sort of Edward G. Robinson looking guy with the goofy guy, that was Lenny and what's his name from Of Mice and Men?
Carl. No. Lenny and George.
Lenny and George.
Oh, that's what they named them?
Yeah, they named them Lenny and George, and that's where their personalities come from. And of course, we have Mohawk, which he's the stand-in for Spike for this movie.
Is Lenny the one that was the one that Phoebe Cates thought was Gizmo somehow? Like,
No, that was
No,
Daffy.
that's Daffy.
Daffy. Okay.
Daffy was just totally insane. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like attacking her, and
But I think those
when
were the
he-
only named ones. And then Brain Gremlin or Brainy Gremlin.
they called me a
Gremlin.
Gremlin.
And then you got the Bat Gremlin, which looked awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let's go back to that for a quick second, and then we can. This is like one of my rail on the film. They had this whole setup where he's got not a small. It wasn't a small culture. It was a sizable beaker of UV protection. Mm-hmm. And he injected the one gremlin with it. And then he went out and he saw that it worked. He didn't goo out or burst into flames. Like, cool, it worked. And the gremlins didn't do anything with it. The brainy gremlin didn't inject others with it, didn't inject himself with it. Nothing. They don't bring it up again at all.
And that's the thing, is that like they plant all these seeds, like there's going to be a larger plot, like there's going to be some larger danger there, but it just never actually happens. And then
Nothing.
like 3/4 of the way through the movie, I realized I was like, oh, we're going to be in this building the whole time. Like we're going to
Right.
And, you know, there was one more thing I noticed in the film that I didn't even realize existed back then, was a can of Jolt is on a table.
I saw
one
that
point.
in the
And
restaurant.
I was like, is Jolt a thing that far back? I didn't remember that.
in the restaurant, which
Yeah.
was named Shea Winnipeg, the Canadian.
Oh my god!
They serve
I want to
Molson
go to that
and Jolt, I
restaurant.
guess.
I want that mousse dessert. I want to try
what
it.
was
You want to
the,
get horn?
Yeah, you want a little antler?
What was
No,
the
he
name
said you
of
want to
the,
get horn.
Oh, stop it!
What was the name of the donut place?
Oh, I don't remember. I
the
remember seeing
background?
it, but I don't remember.
It was like,
Oh god, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous names for every place there, and like the unique signs that they had made, like in neon for a majority of them, were just hilarious.
I think the donut place is the real place.
Really?
I think it's a real thing, because I think it was product placement, because a lot of stuff was just product placement.
Well, the name of the entire place was the Premier Regency Trade Center and Retail Concourse.
that was where they filmed everything.
No, that's what the
Oh,
clamp
that was what it was
thing
called. Oh, jeez.
You know what's,
Yeah.
you know what's sad about
on
that?
the sign.
I was just trying to figure out if the letters spelled something. They don't. They're just a log. It's just a log.
No, it's just particular. Oh, and I know, I'm pretty sure Gill has watched it. I don't know about Justin, but have you guys watched Breaking Bad?
Yes.
Did you notice a cameo or two from that?
Whoa, where?
Very difficult to spot one. The other is very obvious. The obvious one is Raymond Cruz, who played Tuco, is the delivery guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't even put that
saw
together.
him
As soon as you said it, I went, oh, it's him.
immediately. But when I was on IMDb, I did not catch this. But when I was on IMDb, I saw Dean Norris's name, who played Hank. He was one of the SWAT
was
guys
he?
at the end. The
I
guy,
did see that.
when the thing squirts at him, he
Yeah.
shoots it and said, "It moves, Sarge," or whatever he
Yes,
said. That
that's
was
awesome.
Hank. Yeah, I thought that was so cool.
Oh man, we left out. It was something major we left out when we were talking about the various gremlins.
Uh-oh.
The girl gremlin.
Oh gosh, yeah. That was one thing I wanted to talk about, is that the sophistication of gender distinctions has really evolved in 27
lot.
years, and this
Like a
movie, in that sense, is very dated. Along with the racist stereotypes, it's very
I don't know. I mean, I think
Weird.
that there's something to be said about the fact that Marla's his boss. Like that was, you know,
Yeah.
it's weird
Well,
to
yeah.
see. It's weird to see a movie where there's a woman who's actively chasing a man and he's actually below her, and you know,
Right.
it's just like that was a little bit actually.
I just meant more
progressive.
in the vein of like genetic gender specificity and
Gender identity. And all those
binary
different things, yeah.
gender based on
But we are talking about two different
drinking
very different decades. The 80s was a part of it was woman empowerment. You look at a lot of the other films of that era, there were very strong female characters in those films.
And the 80s also had a weird vein running through it of it's that weird decade where you saw the kind of like rise in what was like the rating systems didn't really cover things correctly in the 80s. And so the 90s is the first time you get that sort of like we come back out of it and there's a defined like this is what a rated R movie is, this is what a PG-13
Right.
movie is.
To that end, a tidbit I found out is the original Gremlins was part of what launched that standard.
It's Gremlins and Temple of Doom.
Yeah, the Temple of Doom.
And, you know,
That's really cool. how this
Pushing
stuff all
the
comes together like
PG-13 forward, for those who don't know.
Yes.
if you look at, I want to say it's Pretty in Pink or 16 Candles, one of the two. There's like a tight shot, like just a tight close up on some tits in a scene transaction, and it's a PG movie, yes. And that would
Which film?
It's either Pretty in Pink or 16 Candles. I want to say it's Pretty in Pink. Basically, what's happening is there's a scene going on, and it ends, and they cut to a girl's locker room, and there's a girl getting dressed, and it goes boing really loud, and like you can see her like her bare breasts are there, and it's before PG-13, but even a PG-13 right now that wouldn't be allowed. No. But, you know, in PG-13 now, you can say fuck one time and get away with it. So it's like, it's weird how the rating system has come along, because there's nothing exactly like in this Gremlins 2 movie, there's nothing that's vulgar. I don't remember even like a curse word beyond hell. There's no nudity. There's sexual suggestion, like with
there's a foot in Billy's crotch.
Yeah, there's sexual suggestion with like the girl Gremlin and Marla and Billy and stuff. But
I thought for sure, not having seen this movie in a while, that when Billy comes in to check on I guess it's Kate, right? And then the character's
name? Kate.
Okay. Check on Kate right before he goes to dinner with Marla. That they're in, and there's like a locker room thing behind her, and this girl comes out with a towel wrapped around her. I'm like, are we about to see some butt, some boobs? What's about to happen right now? And then nothing comes. And I'm like,
no.
What was the fucking point of that?
Yeah, this is not NYPD Blue, Gill. Everybody has an ass contract in this movie.
Oh man! Well, no. I'm going to bring up the girl Gremlin again real quick.
Sure,
please don't.
Because one of my favorite memes that I've seen recently is it shows the Gremlin girl Gremlin next to Nicki Minaj.
Oh
with
my
both
gosh.
with a green rig on, and that's all I could think of when I was watching the movie. And I first saw her, I went, "Oh God, no, oh no, my anaconda, don't! I can't."
That is awful. But the girl Gremlin like is the most probably movable of them. Like if you look at her, she moves the most like a real person. And it's funny because they don't show very much of her, but she's easily the best animated of the Gremlins, because every other Gremlin is shot from the waist up like they're Elvis Presley on, you know, fucking primetime TV. And
right.
And when they do shoot them from the waist down, it's almost like they either do that weird green screening thing, or they just kind of like sort of throw them forward and then cut away real quick. Like,
or they're stomping on something, like it's a come down motion.
Yeah, it's never like, and you know, it's not to the point where I saw like a wire or something with the Gremlin being moved. There might be some, but I just didn't notice them. But I
didn't see any feet moving.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, like the Gizmo is the best animated, but I think the fur kind of gives him an
is
advantage.
The absolute most marketable thing in that entire film. I mean, with that movie coming out, that reinvigorated an entire toy line and multiple.
They mention it in the movie.
Gizmo being on everything, exactly.
Part of the satire.
That's what I'm saying. Is like there's a reason he's the most emotive, and you know he sells. Gizmo sells easy because he's cute.
Well, I will say though, I felt like the spider scene was pretty cool when the spider was crawling forward and you could see all of the legs moving and everything.
That was
and
good too.
Also I thought the bat, there were portions where the bat gremlin looked kind of goofy, but I thought it was a pretty cool effect. Actually, when it was attacking Mr. Futterman.
Only at the very beginning when its wings are growing out, and it's obviously like that weird you know, Jason and the Argonauts animation.
Yeah,
that it's a problem.
Like a bold claymation.
Stop motion.
Yeah. But you know, the other thing,
there was a little bit of that when he was flying outside.
It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad in that light though, because the early one is stop motion and it's like rotoscoped onto the frame too. Like it's like put over him. It's not even like happening in the same frame. He looks clear, and the wings look like Ghostbusters ghosts. Like they're like translucent and see-through and stuff.
We did forget another cool transition though, or transformation, which is the vegetable gremlin. That was pretty cool.
That was deeply upsetting.
I wanted to
his ears like sucked in and turned into lettuce.
In that room when they were coming up with all these different gremlins. I mean, can you imagine the conversation they were having?
Fun.
Well, I mean, all right, they're going through. They're like, okay, we got to have another Spike. Okay, we'll do Mohawk. Cool. Here's the design, and we got these other goofy ones. Bat, electricity, spider, and then Steve in the back, who's drunk in most of the meetings, goes, "How about we have a salad bar one, and it burps all the time."
I think
Let's do that.
I think you're picturing the meeting wrong. I think you picked like a giant oak table, just like a mound of cocaine in the middle of it, and it's like everybody's just in there because that had to be what happened. Oh, and there's one more thing I meant to say, like way earlier. I said there was 3 movies taking place. The third movie is actually like this torture porn thing happening to Gizmo.
Yes,
because they just cut to Gizmo and they're electrocuting him, they're tying him to train tracks, they're beating him up.
Like for half the movie.
Yeah. And honestly, the most upsetting thing that happened to him, I felt like this is like kind of dumb. His hand gets slammed in the drawer at the beginning.
Yeah.
I actually felt really bad. Like I was like,
and it's pulsating.
No. Yeah. I was like,
Poor
that's
guy.
really upsetting.
Like, you totally broke his little hand, you dick.
Well,
Watch what you're doing.
apparently in real life, he's a real asshole because I watched the making of featurette and they just, it's really weird making of. It's like 5 minutes and everyone's complaining about how Gizmo is kicking them off the set and the Gremlins are hard to work with. And they cut to Gizmo in like a director's chair and they have little subtitles and he's friggin' cursing. They have like little symbols and stuff. And I'm like, what?
I thought you were going to say the actor that played
Howie
the
Mandel.
main character was hard to work with.
I thought you were talking about Howie Mandel, and I was going to make a joke about it being about Gizmo, but then you went and were like, oh no, they're talking about Gizmo.
Yeah, it was literally Gizmo. It was a weird featurette. I was like, what this is even weirder than the movie.
That's hard to believe.
But I don't want to get through this review without, we brushed on it earlier, but I don't want to get through this review without saying a couple of the lines that the building said.
I have them written down too.
Oh, you do too?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you give me one and I'll give you another one.
The one I have that's more complete is, it says, this is over a scene that actually is pretty sad. So to set the scene, basically, Billy has come and told Kate that he's going to go to a business meeting tonight, but the actual meeting is him going to dinner with his boss, which she's trying to hit on him and frame as a date. And so Kate follows him into the lobby and she's peeking around the corner of the elevators and watching him as he goes up and his boss takes him by the arm and they walk away. And just as she turns around, the building says, "Don't miss Casablanca now in full color with a happier ending."
Yeah, right.
It's kind of a throwback to an earlier part where the building, where they're talking about how the Mr. Clamp doesn't like movies that are not in color.
Right.
And so
like Ted Turner.
It made sense in that way, but it felt kind of like opposed to the seriousness of the scene.
Right. I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
It was pretty out of nowhere because that jarred me too when I heard that. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
And since you mentioned that, they actually have a deleted scene that I saw where Mr. Clamp is in his office and he sees that It's a Wonderful Life is playing, which was another throwback to the first movie, and it's in black and white. And he looks at it like, "What the hell?" And he walks up and presses a button, and it turns to color, and he smiles.
He's got a cut. Wow, the tech in this movie.
Yeah, but
the tech
that
in this movie,
itself
guys,
is, I think, kind of a dig at Ted Turner, because I don't know if this is true or not. I've read it somewhere, but there's something going around that said that Orson Welles, like as he was dying, said, "Keep Ted and his damn crayons away from my movie," because Ted Turner liked to colorize old movies. But that's definitely where that part of Clamp's personality comes from.
Well, to you and Gill saying the technology involved to do that, it's funny you should say that. There's actually, if you go on Reddit and someone posts a black and white photo, you can call upon a colorized bot with a command line.
Wow.
And it will come in, look at the photo, and color it. And it's not perfect, but it does it pretty damn well for a robot to be doing
That's
this.
cool. That's really cool. That's better than the old way, which was painting each frame by hand.
I mean, well, it's just a photo, though. It's not like it's a video.
Right.
I mean, I can colorize the photo, too, but it takes a lot of work. And this robot does a pretty good job of it. Like, it still looks...
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
It still looks off, but it doesn't look as off as you would expect, like, for a robot.
For an automated system.
Yeah.
Right. Well... Speaking of automated systems, I want to say my absolute favorite movie line, period, but also from The Building.
Yeah.
and I'll try to recreate the feeling and see if you can remember where it came in the movie. Fire, the untamed element, oldest
Jesus,
of man's
yes.
mysteries, giver of warmth, destroyer of forests. Right now, this building is on fire. Yes, the building is on fire. Leave the building. Enact the age-old drama of self-preservation.
Okay. So I like how we both got different lines because I have a third line that I thought you were going to say.
Oh, I got two more, so hit me with it.
I actually don't have but this last one for me. It said near the end of the movie. Actually, it said after the building starts to go wonky and everybody's just kind of hanging out in the lobby.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Please remove your car from the garage. And it kind of pauses and goes, it's old and dirty.
Old and dirty, right?
As she's getting onto the elevator for the second time.
Yes.
Is when that was. Yep.
Well, I have one from the beginning of the movie. I think it's when they first walk in and the door throws the guy into the woman and all the papers are flying everywhere. The voice says, please be careful stepping in and have a powerful day.
That's a good gag, too. And I really wish that they had used that door for something else. Like when I first saw
for
it,
something
I thought they were going to
plot.
throw a gremlin in it and like fling him back out.
When they tried to get back in the building,
Yes, the SWAT team.
You did see them trying to get some woman who was stuck in those doors out of it.
Well, the SWAT team comes up to the door and is like, no, 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 no. And then they're like, no, no, no. And then they kind of scutter over to the other door.
Yeah. And now when I see revolving doors, I just think of The Walking Dead. A character died because of a revolving door.
That was stupid.
It was stupid.
Sorry.
It was the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Because that was a good character. And they're just like, we're going to kill this character because...
That was like a Saturday Night Live sketch.
Yeah.
That scene.
It's
like, no.
It really was an SNL sketch. Like, I can't remember exactly what happened, but the person was in the revolving door and they just needed to turn it to get him out.
Right.
And there was like zombies in one compartment and he was in the middle compartment. And instead of just turning past the zombies, they leave him in there and he kind of like gets caught between the doors and the zombies like rip him apart through the crack in the door. But they could have turned the door so that he was trapped in the wall side or turned the door till they were past the zombies. And like they just let this character die. And it was also another black character and the show has had like a streak. I basically felt like there was like a version of The One going on where every black character that died, this one character named Morgan got more powerful because he's like a ninja later from nowhere. And it's like, if he can survive them all.
So he's secretly orchestrating the death of the other black characters.
That's what it is.
Well, yeah, he's like the one with Jet Li.
I was just about to say...
Oh, I thought you meant the one for Highlander. I was like, I can't wait till the quickening when just lightning shoots out of his head.
That's the scene we don't see in the show is that after these black characters die, Morgan comes out and like, pops their noggin open and sucks the lightning out.
You just see him holding his hand over their chest and just absorbs.
He just knocks their head off with his Donatello bow staff.
He yells, "I have the power!" like all He-Man style.
But I can't use it, Rick. I can't.
I got to hold the power. Jesus
oh my God.
Christ. Oh, so what did you guys actually think of the overall film? I mean, from tip to tail. I mean, what did you actually think of the film?
I'll let Justin go first.
I wasn't like as endeared by it as you guys, but I feel like, I've seen a lot of bad movies lately. I've had to sit through both Suicide Squad and Batman v Superman in the last year, and those movies made me sick to my stomach. I slept 13 hours after Batman v Superman. And I can't sit through a really terrible movie. It's not that bad. It has its charm. Like you said, the creatures and the effects are actually really good because the early 90s is kind of a dead zone for effects. Like for some reason we lost the power of the 80s and got worse for a bit there. And then at some point like CGI kind of picked up and got better. But before CGI got really good, there was this puppet problem in the early 90s that just wasn't they couldn't make puppets anymore. Jim Henson had died and I guess he took all the puppet power with him and like that's really good. And I did like Phoebe Cates. I did like Haviland. I did like the Asian character. Like I thought they were kind of, it was kind of neat. I liked the callback to the newsman thing where he becomes a newsman and starts reporting. I thought that was really cool.
Grandpa Fred. And
I expected them to go and like make him up like a newsman and like make him almost unrecognizable, but they kept him in the vampire suit. I thought that was really cool. It's really well shot. which other than the parts where they're trying to, show some motion on a gremlin, the movie is shot really well. I kept thinking about...
there's some angles they use that really get, like, you get a real sense of dread out of some of this.
It's not even just the angles. It's like there's this thing they were talking about with John Wick, which what made John Wick so special was that John Wick is shot so that every scene is clear. There's never a part of John Wick where you can't tell what action is happening because they just put the camera on the action and let the action play out. And if the action moves, they move the camera with it. This movie does the same thing. And that was a thing we didn't see very often in the later 90s. And after Jason Bourne came out, it got really tough to find that. Because it was just like...
everybody wanted to ape that style.
It's not just aping the style. It's just that they didn't train actors to fight, and they didn't have the effects to cover it. So if you don't have the effects to cover it, you just cut around the bad effects. And I mean, movies still do it. You know, the Marvel films do it. And nothing bad to them. It's just they don't have time to train 80 different people to fight because there's so many characters. But like, they cut around the effects, and this movie doesn't do that. They just shoot something dead on.
Yeah.
Why don't they just go with the great late 70s to the end of the 80s trope of just putting everybody in ninja masks so you can have the same guy fight 16 different times? He just comes back on. He's a different ninja.
Or Marvel Netflix series.
Or you have stunt doubles too. You know, there's stunt doubles that are really, really blatant. Buffy and Angel are notorious for it.
Oh, we're rewatching Angel. We're rewatching Angel right now, and every other scene, I'm like, my God, there's no way that's David Boreanaz.
Angel's not as bad. I think that Buffy's stunt double is bad because I want to say my friend PJ said that some of her doubles might even be a dude.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, and he was just like, it's blatantly a dude. It's like you can see his Adam's apple, and he was just like, the other problem is that they don't just like, when you use a stunt double, you cut to that stunt double. You don't show the stunt double standing perfectly still in place of the character. They do that
all the time.
They just shoot from the side. Like, that's supposed to be Buffy talking to this guy, and it's the stunt double for 10 seconds on screen.
That's one of the few major problems I have rewatching Buffy.
Another
is that it's not really as feminist sometimes. As
it's really bad. Joss Whedon's the worst.
Okay, that can be another podcast too.
Like, I was going to say the other thing is that
I'm totally in for that.
I actually looked for this in this movie because I talked about it with somebody else. Was the idea of you seeing cameramen and things, because it happens pretty often that you see a cameraman on mistake.
Oh, shit that should not be.
Oh yeah. A good example I can think of off the top of my head is there is a blatant cameraman in Supernatural one time. And the reason why it escapes the editors is because when they were shooting the show, they were shooting an episode that was an episode of a TV show in the show. And so it looks like it's one of the cameramen in the show, but what's happened is that, like, you can tell it's not because you know where everybody is in frame, and it's not one of them. And the guy actually notices he's in frame and steps back out real quick.
Wow!
And so with an old movie like Gremlins, like, you'll probably find this in some movie you're watching. With old movies like Gremlins, what will often happen is because they were shot to be shown on TV, sometimes they're shot for square aspect ratio. So people will be on the edges of the screen just fucking lollygagging and shit because the TV wasn't out there yet. You couldn't see that far. So a lot of shows, you'll see like fucking discarded props and shit if you watch, or like some cartoons, they don't finish the animation to the edge of the screen. And so someone will walk over there and their arms will vanish or something. It's like, what the fuck?
Wow.
So I look for that now when I watch older things because I'm like, I want to find some crazy shit over there.
Oh, God, you ought to start a blog. All right, so Levi, what did you think of the film?
Well, full disclosure, folks, I was the one that chose this film, and I chose it because I have a lot of affection for it. And while I like Gremlins, and I think Gremlins in a lot of ways is a better movie, I still like Gremlins 2 a lot. And I might even like it a little bit more than the first one. As I alluded to earlier, and I've said before, I wasn't really into horror movies as a kid, and I think I liked something about Gremlins, but it was tough for me to watch. But then Gremlins 2 came, and it's basically just like a cartoon, with a live action cartoon with Gremlins. And that, the zaniness of it, I was huge into cartoons and Looney Tunes. And I think this brought a lot of that flavor, and also just the sort of action figure multiplicity of the Gremlins being, you know, you have a vegetable gremlin and a bat gremlin and a lightning gremlin. I thought that was really cool as a kid. And I enjoyed the movie so much now too, because a lot of the things that are goofy in the movie have come to pass and we've surpassed it. Like they have an archery channel and the personal injury channel. We have things like that now. And we have 24-hour news networks that probably have tapes for the end of the world, like, like Clamp puts in. And I just think there's so much. There's also at the beginning of the movie, there's a point where one character says they're talking about the company Splice Life that is at the top of the building. And they say that they took out a patent on a germ, and he acts like it's really creepy and everything. But like people are patenting genes and stuff now. And, you know, that was sort of, I guess, happening when this movie came out, but nothing to the extent of what it is now. And I think it's cool to look at it with this lens of today and looking back and seeing what has come to pass, including one small thing in an outtake. There was a deleted scene where there was a scene in the control room, and the doctor, I can't remember his name, Forster, he's in there and he says, put on the subliminal messages. And they have subliminal messages they pump through the building. And one of them is, don't you think Mr. Clamp would make a great president? So yeah. I just laughed out loud, and I was watching on my laptop, and my wife was like, "What?" I told her, and I was just it was just funny because I was already making notes about things that this movie sort of predicted, and like the popularity of frozen yogurt and natural ingredients, and you know, not cage free and all that. They kind of make fun of it, and nobody knew.
Think about it.
Nobody knew that things were going to get to where they are now. And the scene where one more, and then I'll quit this. But
no, you're good. You're good. Keep it rolling.
The scene where he's trying to talk to his wife, and the light goes out. And she's like, you got to move because it thinks you've left. I've had that happen to me before because I used to have a job at a big company. I'm not going to say what they were, but it was one of those companies where if you're still for long enough, the lights went out. And I worked late a couple nights and the lights would go out. So I'd have to walk around the little cubicle nest for the lights to come back on. So I thought that was hilarious. But that's how I feel about this movie. It just is something I can relate to. And it reminds me of the 80s and the 90s and the cheesiness of those movies. It wasn't just cheesy. It had something to bite into. You know, it's not something like some of the movies that they release today that don't really have anything to bite into. It's just joke after joke after joke. I feel like there's a little substance to this, and the fact that Joe Dante was kind of poking fun at movies and his own movie and sequels in general. I just love this movie. How about you, Gill?
Well, I mean, for me, I honestly fall somewhere kind of in the middle. I lean more toward liking it, but I did have a lot of issues with it because I think I came in with the nostalgia goggles on pretty heavy, thinking I was really just going to popcorn in and not have any.
You can borrow mine. I still got mine on.
But I gotta say, watching the film, there was a lot of times I went, what the fuck? Why would you put that in here? You know, I gotta look at it through the lens of the time that it was made, but I still have hangups when I watch these films and think about when I was a kid liking them and being the adult I am now and knowing the things that I think, I could show that to my kid. There's parts of this and I'm like, I can never show that to her.
Right.
So she's an adult.
Right.
Why did my parents let me watch this? What the hell? Overall, I did enjoy seeing the film again. I did like the fact that it did, like you say, nod to a lot of things currently. And I think they pulled a real Simpsons here with the way that they prognosticated a lot of things. Mm-hmm. The other part of this that I just made me want to watch the film was they had a horror host in it.
Yes.
Not a lot of things nod to if we're going to bring this back to Midnight Lair and where this podcast originates, few things reference that old school treatment of TV. Mm-hmm. And I think with them having this place be a, all of Clamp TV is filmed right here on site. And they had a horror host as part of this. Mm-hmm. And I love the phrase he said is like, kid, nobody that's up at 3 a.m. watching this is afraid of the wolf. I love that.
The best part is it was 3 a.m. when I was watching that. And so
nice.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
But yeah, I love the characters. I love the designs of the Gremlins. Those were my absolute favorite part of this film, is the Gremlins themselves and the mayhem they caused. I could give two shits about the rest of the cast, except Phoebe Cates. Love her. But yeah, I loved it. Nim would and does love this film. He wishes it wasn't so recent a film so that he could actually show it on the show. But I think the movie is enough self-referential and humorous that really they couldn't poke much fun at it.
Cool.
So I think with that, guys, we could put the nail in this coffin and call it a night.
Sing New York,
Yes.
New York? In the lobby?
Sing that. Yeah, pop that at the end, Levi. Pop in them singing New York, New York in the end.
If we can afford it.
Yeah, can't we actually do that? Because,
Nah, it's copyrighted.
That's what I
We
thought.
can't do that. So, Justin, let me just toss this out. Thank you for joining us tonight, and I'm looking forward to you being a part of the show going forward. Just so you guys know,
Definitely.
Justin is going to be a new host permanently on the show.
Yes,
so it's gonna be
welcome.
the three of us.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Levi, where can they catch us?
Well, you can catch us online at fromthebonevault.podbean.com. And you can also go to our Midnight Lair website, which is midnightlairshow.com.
And what's our email address?
Oh, that would be fromthebonevault@gmail.com.
Where you can send us any follow-up to this movie. Send us, if you can, whether it's in the comments for this episode, the YouTube version when it goes up, or just email us. Let us know what your favorite gremlin in this movie was.
Yeah. And since you mentioned YouTube, I will mention anyone who isn't aware, I've started releasing season 1. Actually, all of season 1 has been released on YouTube under our Midnight Lair YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to that in the description. This episode will go up on YouTube afterwards, but our podcast will always be priority, and that will come out first. But we're going to start doing things with our YouTube channel with relation to Midnight Lair, so keep an eye on that. Subscribe if you can.
Yeah, every like, favorite, and subscribe helps us out, guys. We really appreciate it.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that being said, from the Bone Vaults, this is Gill.
And this is Levi.
This is Justin.
Good night and stay scary.
Bam, 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 bam,
Santa died in the chimney.